the shop of Team MGR. I'm the Junkman, and today we're going to change a motorcycle tire. Before you get started, you need a few things before you want to even tackle this job. First off, I highly recommend getting a brand new tube. I mean, even if the original tube in the tire was not giving you any problems, it's a high degree of probability that you might damage it when you're removing it, or that it's just old and it's just good insurance. You already got the tire off, why not put in a high quality tube? Also, you're going to want to get the proper tool. Here are a couple tire spoons. I've had these for about 15 years. There's a couple of different designs and whatnot. These are from Motion Pro, actually. I like these. They give you a lot of leverage and everything. Obviously, these aren't something that you could carry in a tool pack, but they do make ones. So you could be doing this on the side of the trail, should you ever have to. Some tools you don't want to use is obviously screwdrivers or pry bars. I mean, they'll work in a pinch, but it's a high probability that you're going to pinch the tube. That's the difference between having dedicated tire spoons. These curves and these smooth edges that they have will help let the tube slip by should you get near it. I mean, you still have to be careful with them, but it just makes it a lot easier to mount and dismount the tire. The sharp areas of, say, a screwdriver is just you cut the tire, and also you might damage the rim as well. Another tool here. This is also another type of tool for taking the bead off. After you get it, you can run it around there and take it off. Now, before I get started, I might want to just tell you, I'm an average do-it-yourself. I'm not a pro at this. You go to a motocross race or any kind of motorcycle race, you're going to see those pros just zipping these things in and off. They're going to have an actual tire stand and everything. But I wanted to do this for the average do-it-yourselfer that's at home and wants to replace a new tire. Well, first thing you got to do is we got to let the air out of the tube. And to use that, you're going to need to remove the core. So you're going to need a tool like this. This is actually part of a valve cap. This is a metal one. Sometimes the new tube will come with a plastic one. There are ones like this that have a couple other ends on. This is for rethreading and some deburring. But obviously, these ones don't always work because they hit the spokes. So chances are you're going to need one like this. And if it's not, usually the core should not be stuck in there too much. As you can hear the air coming out. And unscrew it. Well, the next thing you got to do is break down the bead. Now, usually on typical motorcycle rims, you can just press and get the bead broken. If you can't, sometimes you have to put it on the ground and step on it with your feet. Sometimes you got to use a hammer. Like I said, there's fancy tools for breaking the bead. One thing you got to remember is this is a front wheel, obviously, so you got your brake rotor here. If this was a rear wheel, obviously we'd have the sprocket under here. So what you'd want to do, I like to use an old car rim and set it on the rim, and it'll hold onto the spokes. Then you can kind of lever on it without risking damaging either your brake rotor or your sprocket and bending it. Okay, now I got the bead broken. And if you were having troubles breaking the bead, there is a little tool that you can screw on here, use your air, and suck the rest of the air out of the tube, and sometimes it will pull the tire down. But like I said, we got this one broken down just by putting it on the ground and stepping on it, and it broke loose easy. Next thing we need to do is remove this little nut. Now granted, if this was a tube type or a tubeless type rim, we wouldn't need to do this, but this just kind of holds the valve stem from falling into the tire, which is more important when we go to reinstall. So you'll just want to kind of push it in there, and now we're ready to lever the tire off of the rim. Alright, we're going to start levering the tire off. I like to start at the valve stem, because then if I'm going to reuse this tube, which most of the time I don't want to damage it, so I want to get the tire away. And it'll take a little bit levering. And that's a good thing about, if you can, you got your sprocket or brake rotor, you can hold that underneath there, and with your second bar, stick it under there, and with your second bar, stick it under there, and pull it out, and you'll just keep working around the tire. Now this is an old tire, so it's kind of hard and kind of rotten, almost dry rotted. So, I mean, it's not uncommon for you to chunk a little bit out of an old tire. And this one, if you can see here, is pretty well worn out, so it doesn't matter. We're not going to try and install this on another bike or anything, because honestly, this one's being replaced more as a safety concern than that it's actually completely wore out and down to the cords. Okay, we're just about around to the to where we started. One more pry gotta get the tire off this side of the rim, and there we go. All right, next thing we gotta do is we need to push our valve stem in and pull it out of the hole. It might be a little hard for you to see, and this is a tricky part because you gotta hold the tire up and reach in there and grab the tube. And you'll pull it out, and there we go. And just work your way around and pull the tube out. Okay, we got our old tube out. And now's a good time if you wanted to look at it. Like I said, if it was, you know, this is probably a 20-year-old tube, so I probably won't reuse this. But you could inspect it here. But obviously it's never been out of here for a patch because I don't see any patches on it. So this might be actually salvageable. Alright, next thing we got to do is we have the back side, and I need to break the bead on this. So we'll use the same technique, and because I got to flip it over and my brake rotor's here, I don't want to bend or break this. I'm going to need to put it on a car rim and break this other side down, and then we're going to use the same technique to pull the tire off the rim. Alright, I used my tire iron to start levering it off, and once you get it a little ways, you can usually just pull the rim out, and now you got the rim off the tire. One of the next things we're going to want to do here is just check the rim band here. This protects the tube from the spoke nipples. Now also a good time is you could check your spokes, and if any are like excessively loose, if you take this rim off, you have some adjustments you can do down here. Not only if you couldn't get these to turn, now's the time to break them all loose, spray them with some lube, and get them freed up. Now it's time to put on our new tire. First things first, if this was a directional tire, I'd want to make note there would be an arrow for the direction of the rotation on this. And I'd want to make sure that I installed it correctly. You know, this rim would normally, for forward direction, would rotate this way, so I would need to have the arrow pointing this way once I put it on. This tire is unidirectional, meaning it doesn't have a direction, so I can just put this on any old way. It doesn't really matter. And to start this, usually the best way is to you can just press it on as much as you can, and then you'll get your tire irons and have to press them on. Now, the pros have a trick to doing this, and I'll be honest, I've never been able to do it, but there's ones where they can just go like that and it's on. I always have to go all the way and then get my tire irons out and put one in here to hold it while I lever from the other side, and that's what I'm going to do now. Alright, I just about got it on. Let's see, there. Now the rim's on. Okay, next step is we got to put our tube in. Even though I said the old tube was probably reusable, I decided to go with a brand new tube. It's a heavy duty tube. This actually is going on my dual sport bike, so it sees highway and off-road, and I ride a lot of rocks and such. So I'm putting a heavy-duty tube in there just to try to prevent pinch flats and such and getting me stranded so I can't get home. However, you know, you can use whatever tube you want. First, as you see, I have my tube already kind of stuffed in the tire, and I have my valve stem lined up with the hole. And this is always the tricky part because, you know, usually a new tire, new tube, they're not as flexible, and then these heavy-duty tubes are a little more, they're a little thicker, so they're not as pliable. And actually, I got it in there real quick, and I took off the nut, and I'm going to just put it on there, a couple of threads hold it in, because actually I need it so I can move it around a little bit and then get it straight once I press the tube the rest of the way in the rim. Okay, now I have the tube seated in the rim. Now I notice my valve stem's a little cockeyed, so what I can do is move the tire just a little bit, install around the rim, stick my hand in there and fiddle with it a little bit, and you can, it takes some time, but you can get it so it's straight. Now I got my valve stem straight, and I tightened up the nut just a little bit. I didn't tighten it. I left still some play, because you want a little bit of play, but you want to pull the tube up and kind of hold it in there, because as you're working here it could shift, and that'll help it. Now I got my tire irons in here, and I like to start at the stem and get it started. And one tire iron you're going to hold, and when you stick these in there, you got to be careful not to grab the tube. You want to just grab the edge, and if you notice, I'm using the opposite side of the tire iron, and you just kind of work your way around and just redoing what you undid. Here's a common problem that most of you are going to have when you're getting just to the last little part of putting it on here, is you got to hold one side or the other, otherwise you just keep moving it around the rim. This little tool isn't required, but it's really handy, and it's really inexpensive. I think it's about $5, $6, $7. And what it is just a little thumb screw, and it fits over the rim, and it'll hold, so when you go to wrench on this, you're not going to keep pushing this around the tire. So it's a really handy little tool. Not required, but makes it a lot easier. Okay, we're getting to the last little bit here, and might be able to just push it around the corner. There we go. And take our little handy dandy tool off. With any luck, we didn't pinch the tube, as long as we were careful. Now we're ready to air it up. Okay, now we're ready to air it up for the first time. Now I'm leaving this the nut that goes around the valve stem loose for now until I air it up. And we want to kind of be careful. We want to seat the bead, and usually it'll seat pretty easily. You'll usually hear the rubber kind of creaking. You might have to do a couple of stages of this, because you usually don't want to overfill it too much the first go around. You can kind of watch it come up, and you're going to overfill it with air this first time. If you're having trouble with seating the bead, you may want to get a hammer, and you can pound on it. That sometimes helps pop the bead, especially on tubeless tires. This is a big deal. If you're having trouble, fill it up as far as you feel comfortable. Maybe 50-60 pounds. That's pretty safe. Then let the air out. Let the air out of it and let it out. Clear out, and then bring the pressure up again. And usually doing this 1, 2, 3, 4 times can usually help. If you're really having a hard time, especially with tubeless, is you can run some dish soap, or they make a special tire lubricant, run it around there. That will help the tire slip past the bead and and seat the bead properly. Well, after you've seated the bead, you want to air down to the proper pressure that's appropriate for the tire and bike that you're changing the tire on. As you can see, it's definitely something that just about anybody can do with the proper tools. Do not use screwdrivers. I've done it. You really run the risk of pinching the tube. With proper tools, it makes that almost impossible to do. I mean, you still can. You just got to be careful. Some other tips are, you're probably asking, well, where's the rim clamp on this? Most dirt bike tires and even some street bike tires have a rim clamp, which that keeps the tire from spinning on the rim under hard braking or hard acceleration. And this one just didn't have it. Didn't come with the factory. The rear does on this particular bike, but I chose this because I needed to put a new tire on it. But it would be the last thing that you tighten after you seat your bead, and that'll clamp it to there. It makes changing the tire a little bit more difficult, but you loosen it first and you tighten it last, and just work your tire around it. Actually, this little tool that I showed you, actually the rim clamp actually helps hold the tire in place as you're horsing it around, as you saw in my video, and kind of makes this tool not necessary. However, this is a nice little thing to have because some tires don't have rim clamps. But, well, I see you don't have to be an expert to do it. You know, first timers, at least carve out a good 30 minutes for your first time. I suppose if I was doing this, trying to race through, I could probably do this under 10 minutes. But, you know, about 20 minutes is a good time to change a typical dirt bike tire. So it's definitely, even if you're a first timer, it's something you can try. So until next time, I'm the Junk Man.